Hello everyone and welcome to UZ Report World News Broadcasting with the latest news from Uzbekistan and around the world. Uzbekistan's service sector was under scrutiny on Friday as President Shavkat Mirziyoyev outlined additional measures intended to boost this direction. He urged local banks to spend loans worth some $1.7 billion to support the sector hardly affected by the coronavirus pandemic.
Mirziyoyev said that Uzbek entrepreneurs were granted 24 types of tax benefits, subsidies and other preferences for a sum of $3.3 billion. By the end of this year, the government plans to spend additional funds worth $300 million through commercial banks to revive the sector. The National Bank was instructed to raise an additional $200 million to open tourist, transport, medical, educational services and large shopping centers in 28 large and medium-sized cities. The total amount raised from the budget and banks to support the service sector is set to comprise $500 million. Before setting a task, we must create conditions, allocate funds. We intend to spend $500 million for the service sector alone. If we use these funds correctly and honestly, thousands of jobs will be created. Every minister must work as a patriot, valuing each allocated sum. Only then people will trust us, said Mirziyoyev. He also ordered to create special streets of trade and services in 28 cities and district centers with a population of more than 150,000 people. Thousands of businesses could operate on these streets.
Shavkat Mirziyoyev said Uzbekistan was open to the world and seeks to further strengthen ties with the international community based on mutual trust and friendship. The president on Friday received the credentials of the ambassadors of a number of foreign countries.
In September 2018, there was a historic visit by His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to Uzbekistan. And this was very important for all of us because it was a major breakthrough in our relationships. And it produced tangible roadmap for priority areas of cooperation. We are working on this, but of course, because of the pandemic, the process is a little bit slow. But the same priorities for the Uzbek side, it's our same priority because next year we will celebrate the 30th anniversary of establishing diplomatic relations between the two countries. And from now on, we started to coordinate with each other for a series of events, and not only events, but projects, mutual projects. We have pharmaceutical industries, we have agriculture, and we have a cooperation between universities. We have a lot of areas, but we hope that we could manage to arrange for next year.
We have an extremely good relationship between the EU and Uzbekistan, and in fact one of the objectives of this year will be to try to finalize the enhanced partnership and cooperation agreement. The negotiations have been going on even during the pandemic, thanks to the good work, in fact, of the members of the government, and I think, in fact, we are getting to the completion of the agreement, and this will be taking, in fact, the relationship between Uzbekistan and the European Union to a higher level.
Uzbekistan's main rate remained unchanged at 14% per annum, the press service of the banking regulator said on April 22. The decision was made to ensure a balance between reducing inflation and supporting economic activity in the context of economic recovery, as well as maintaining the slowing dynamics of the inflation and inflation expectations against the background of risks of rising food prices in foreign markets. Inflation by year-end is expected to slow to 9–10%. In March of this year, annual inflation comprised 10.9%. By the end of March this year, core inflation was 11.6%, which is slightly higher than general inflation. Current trends in the prices of vegetable oil and sugar could be factors that increase inflation expectations. According to the country's statistical committee, GDP during the first quarter grew 3% in real terms compared to the same period last year. The output of industrial goods increased by 3.8%, agriculture by 3.1%, services by 5.8%, and construction works by 0.5%. The volume of investments in fixed assets in the reporting period amounted to $3.4 billion. Investments from non-centralized sources made up $3 billion, up 13.6% year-on-year. Commercial banks during the first quarter channeled $3.1 billion of loans into the economy, up 11% year-on-year. The volume of cross-border money transfers during the first 3 months of this year soared by 31% to $1.4 billion. The above-mentioned trends in turn contributed to the stability of the domestic foreign exchange market as of April 1, 2021. The devaluation of the national currency since the beginning of the year stood at 0.2%. US Auto Motors has announced the upcoming issue of its first international bonds in the amount of $300 million. Citi, MUFG, Natixis, Raiffeisen Bank International are said to be organizers of the underwriting bank. Fitch and Standard & Poor's earlier assigned the Uzbek car producer B+ credit rating. The company plans to host a global investor call between April 22 to 27 of this year. According to a decree inked by President Shavkat Mirziyoyev earlier this month, US Auto Motors is expected to conduct IPO on the Tashkent Stock Exchange by 2024. The Central Bank of Uzbekistan is expecting gold prices to rise to return to sales after it suspended the gold export in September last year. Deputy Chairman of the regulator, Behzod Hamrayev, told Reuters. The reason we haven't sold gold since September last year is because the price of gold was lower than we expected. As of April 1st, gold was trading at $1,681 per ounce. This morning it is $1,792 and $1,793. But we still consider it low, Hamrayev said. Uzbekistan sold 100 tons of gold in 2020, compared to 110 tons a year earlier. Gold accounts for 60% of our reserves. If we need cash, we can top it up with other transactions without selling gold. Therefore, there is no pressure on us. No one puts pressure on us in what volume and when to sell, the Hamrayev added. Uzbekistan's net gold and FX as of April 1st, 2021 decreased to $31,648 billion from $32,419 billion on March 1st. We intend to sell as much gold as we get this year. When the forecast becomes clear, we will act accordingly. We usually buy an average of 100 tons per year. The U.S. expressed its high appreciation towards the democratic transformation underway in Uzbekistan. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Thursday had a telephone conversation with the Uzbek Minister of Foreign Affairs Abdulaziz Kamilov. Blinken praised the results achieved in the field of combating human trafficking and ensuring freedom of religion. The parties stressed the importance of continuing active cooperation within the framework of the C5+1 format. The Uzbek foreign minister invited the U.S. Secretary of State to the high-level international conference, Central and South Asia Regional Connectivity, Challenges and Opportunities, which is due to take place in July this year in Tashkent. Uzbekistan has received the first batch of Sputnik V coronavirus vaccine with assistance of the Russian Direct Investment Fund on Friday. This vaccine has been found to be safe and 91% efficient. Uzbekistan officially approved the vaccine in mid-March and announced the plan of purchasing 1 million doses. A half of purchased amount of Sputnik V vaccines was financed by billionaire Alisher Usmanov, the Uzbek-born Russian oligarch. The country plans to vaccinate around 4 million people against COVID-19 in April-June. Before the end of the year, the number of vaccinated people may reach up to 7 million, or around 20% of the population.
I never imagined that I'd be standing here. The roles should completely be reversed. My son should be burying me.
Hundreds of mourners filled a Minneapolis church Thursday for the funeral of Dante Wright, a 20-year-old black man whose shooting in nearby Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, by a white police officer after a traffic stop has sparked fresh concerns over the way cops treat people of color. His mother, Katie Wright, fought through tears as she spoke from the podium.
My son had a smile that was worth $1 million. When he walked in the room, he lit up the room.
Wright was laid to rest just 2 days after a Minneapolis jury found a white police officer guilty of murdering George Floyd last May, a killing that triggered worldwide protests for racial justice. Floyd's family was among those in attendance Thursday, as well as the loved ones of several other Black Americans who were killed by police, including the mother of Philando Castile and the boyfriend of Breonna Taylor.
The world will never be the same because we're going to stand up for situations like this.
Reverend Al Sharpton gave a rousing eulogy in which he invoked the reason Wright was stopped for expired tags or license plates as a means to demand social justice.
I come to Minnesota to tell you your tags have expired. Your tags of racism has expired. Your tags of police brutality has expired. Your tags of white supremacy has expired. Your tags of looking at us different than everybody else has expired.
Police video of the shooting showed multiple officers attempting to arrest Wright before Officer Kimberly Potter threatens to stun him with her taser, but instead fires her handgun. Potter, who has resigned, has been charged with second-degree manslaughter.
Unlike you, my generation will not give up without a fight.
18-year-old climate activist Greta Tunberg sought to shame U.S. lawmakers on Thursday during a House hearing on fossil fuel subsidies, calling tax breaks for that industry a disgrace, and said history would judge those in favor of them harshly.
How long do you honestly believe that people in power like you will get away with it? How long do you think you can continue to ignore the climate crisis, the global aspect of equity and historic emissions without being held accountable? We, the young people, are the ones who are going to write about you in the history books. We are the ones who get to decide how you will be remembered.
The hearing fell on the day President Joe Biden began a virtual 2-day Earth Day Global Climate Summit with the leaders of 40 countries and said the United States, the world's second leading emitter, would cut greenhouse emissions by 50% by 2030 from 2005 levels.
Will we probably exceed it? I suspect yes.
Later, at a White House briefing, U.S. climate envoy John Kerry told reporters that the U.S. will likely exceed that pledge. China, the world's top emitter, said it would begin phasing out coal. And Brazil announced its most ambitious environmental goal yet, saying the country would reach emissions neutrality 10 years earlier than its previous target. Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro had sought to closely align with the United States under former President Donald Trump, who did not criticize Brazil's environmental policy despite a major surge in Amazon rainforest deforestation and fires. But the Biden administration appears to have forced a realignment in relations by placing the environment at the center of U.S.-Brazil talks.
Es el momento de actuar.
Meanwhile, Pope Francis said in his Earth Day message on Thursday that the planet was at the brink and that humanity had to avoid, quote, the path of self-destruction.
The 60-vote threshold having been achieved, the bill as amended is passed.
The U.S. Senate on Thursday overwhelmingly passed a hate crimes bill to combat violence against Asian Americans in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. The rare bipartisan vote in the evenly divided chamber was 94-1, with Republican Senator Josh Hawley the only no vote. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer praised the vote at a news conference Thursday.
This legislation sends a dual message to our Asian American community. We will not tolerate violence and bigotry against you. And to those who perpetrate the violence and bigotry, we're going to pursue you to the full extent of the law.
Reports of violence against Asian Americans have spiked since the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic. Activists and police said anti-Asian sentiment was fed by comments from former President Donald Trump, blaming the pandemic on China, using terms such as Kung Flu.
I can name Kung Flu. I can name...
The bill, authored by Democratic Senator Mazie Hirono and Representative Grace Meng, who are both Asian American, designates a Justice Department employee to expedite a review of hate crimes reported to police during the COVID-19 pandemic. It also provides guidance for local law enforcement agencies to report hate crimes, expand education campaigns, and combat discriminatory language in describing the pandemic. The measure must now pass the House of Representatives, where Democrats hold a clear majority. President Joe Biden has also called for its passage.
As consumers were locked up at home, Nestlé says they bought more packaged food for themselves and their pets. That helped the world's biggest food group post its strongest quarterly sales growth in a decade. Nestlé on Thursday said it's weathered the global health crisis well so far. It expanded e-commerce and its health science portfolio as shoppers became more concerned about their health. The maker of Kit Kat chocolate bars and Nescafé instant coffee expects an increase in organic sales growth this year. They were up 7.7% in the first quarter. Pet care sales rose 8.7%, while powdered and liquid beverages, including coffee, rose nearly 10%. Dairy sales soared over 15%. Nestlé says it will now focus on offering more health and wellness foods and get rid of underperforming businesses. Its shares were trading up as much as 2.7% in early deals.
75-year-old Rex Mann and 83-year-old Jimbo Sneed are spending their twilight years spreading the gospel of the American chestnut tree.
I see the buds on them.
In hopes of restoring it to its former glory. Back in the early 20th century, a blight wiped out some 4 billion trees, stretching from Maine to Georgia.
I grew up listening to chestnut stories. My dad loved the tree, as did Jimbo, and he understood what it meant to the way of life these people in the mountains had. And when we lost that tree, that way of life died with the tree. It passed away.
And they want to bring it back. So they helped arrange an agreement between scientists and the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians in North Carolina to allow for the eventual planting of genetically engineered American chestnut trees on tribal land.
When a tribal member talks about this, they have credibility. And that's what we need, is for the rest of the country to understand this is a serious problem here of what we've done to our land. But there's a way to fix it. And these folks should be in the forefront of that to help bring it back.
We're always taking from the earth and never putting anything in. And today, this gives me strength for hope to put in instead of take from.
For Mann, a retired forester and self-proclaimed chestnut evangelist, and Sneed, an elder member of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, they see the union of science and nature as the key to a blight-resistant chestnut tree revival. Some scientists believe genetic alteration could not only bring back the chestnut tree, but also protect other endangered trees. Jared Westbrook is Director of Science at the American Chestnut Foundation.
There's a number of species where invasive insects and pathogens have been imported into this country. The trees are not resistant, and so, all the tools that we're using, the breeding, the biotechnology, the genomics, it could be used as a kind of a model for these other tree species, but you have to consider that we're dealing with trees, so like anything that we do is going to be slow because the trees they grow only so fast.
Even with a signed agreement, no modified tree can go into tribal soil until the U.S. government signs off on it. B.J. McManama of the Indigenous Environmental Network is outraged.
The hubris of these people saying that they know what's going to happen, that this is going to be good. No, it isn't. And we don't need to be messing around with the building blocks of life and changing things that we really don't have we don't know what we're doing.
And others like Dana Pearls of Friends of the Earth say the modifications don't address a major contributing factor in the chestnut tree's original disappearance.
The chestnut tree went extinct not just because of fungal blight, but also because it was overlogged. Right? There was so much logging plus the fungal blight. What are we doing to address the root causes? Nothing.
For Sneed and Mann, they're looking for science to save the day. The two have already planted hybrid American chestnut trees in Sneed's yard.
Stocks on Wall Street sank across the board Thursday.
on reports that President Joe Biden plans to nearly double the capital gains tax on the wealthy. Sources say Biden will propose hiking that rate as well as a marginal income tax rate to almost 40%. The tax hikes, according to sources, would fund about $1 trillion in investments in childcare, universal pre-K, and paid leave for workers. The news pressured stocks. The Dow lost more than 320 points. The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq both fell about 1%. Region Atlantic Investments co-head Andy Capperin said higher capital gains taxes could hit some of the market's most popular stocks.
It might make certain investments winners versus losers. A lot of people have substantial capital gains in stocks like Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, things that they bought, say, 5 years ago that have quadrupled, quintupled, gone up a lot.
Those three tech titans and Tesla were among the leading decliners Thursday. American Airlines was also among the top losers on the S&P, even though it and Southwest expressed optimism over a recovery after reporting quarterly losses that were smaller than expected. Southwest shares also declined. After the bell, shares of Intel fell, despite forecasting quarterly revenue that topped analysts' targets. The chip maker is betting on demand for its new generation of processors for data centers and PCs.
These were the top headlines for today. Stay safe and goodbye.